This eduroam how-to guide explains configuring NPS Part 2 and shows explaining pattern matching regular expressions, configuring the connection request policies, and configuring the network access policy.
In the previous video, we set up the templates in NPS, which allows us to control everything from one setting. And the next thing we're going to do is set up the connection request policies and the network access policy. So I am now going to log myself in. And as you can see here, we have our NERPS group, we have our Radius clients, and we go into the policies option here. And you can see here that we have connection request policies. There is one that is always set by default, which is user Windows authentication for all users. We have two network policies, which are also included, but we're probably going to delete those at some point. So what we do first is we set up a connection request policy for your local users. So we call this local users on campus. We click next and we add an option here, and we scroll down and we find the username option. We click on add, and now you'll notice that it says here you can use pattern matching syntax. Now, pattern matching, or regular expressions as they're called in the Unix world, allow you to specify a pattern that the server will use to try and match things. We prefer it if you start matching with the @ sign here. Now, the curly bracket 1 means that there should only be one @ sign, and then we add the domain. So we'll just call it domain /.ac/.uk. Now you're wondering what the /dot means. The dot in regular expressions indicates a match for one single character. We don't want to match a single character, which would be the end if I didn't have the / in there. The / effectively escapes it. So it now says match the word domain followed by the actual physical full stop, followed by AC, followed by another actual full stop, followed by UK. The dollar at the end means it ends here. So with this username match, it will match everything ending with @domain.act.uk. Now, if you have multiple other domains like student.domain.act.uk, you may want to edit this by doing the following. You park your cursor after the closing curly bracket. You open a normal bracket and you close it, which indicates a group. Then you shift your cursor back inside the group, and you then provide, for example, student. And you also want to now make sure that you match a full stop. Now you might think, okay, this is now going to just match student.domain.act.uk, which is correct. What you then do is you put a question mark outside the closing bracket, which means the group can match optionally. So if you have this, it will now match everything at domain.act.uk or at student.domain.act.uk. Now we're going to use that. So as an example, now we match at student.domain.act.uk or at domain.act.uk. We click next. We authenticate the requests on this server. We click next. We now override network policy authentication settings, and we add an EAP type called protected EAP. We then click on it. We click on edit. And there you can see that we have a certificate. This is one of the reasons why we ask you to get a certificate issued before you start with the NPS configuration, because without it, you can't do this. So in these options, you untick the option Enforce Network Access Protection, because chances are this is not necessary. You also choose the EAP type here, which is MS-CHAP v2. Click on Edit, and you untick the option allowing the client to change the password and the number of authentication tries to 0. You don't want them to retry authentication. They should have their password correct, and if that occurs, they might get locked out, and this may increase the amount of lockdown requests that you get. But in doing so, it will most likely force them to ensure that their password is correct for eduroam. You click on OK, you click on OK again, and you make sure that all these options are unticked, because we do not want them to try less secure options. So you click Next. We don't set anything in these options. They are all standard. You click on Next, and you have your first policy. What you may want to do with this request policy that you now have is to adjust the condition here to add another condition, and to then go and find something called the client friendly name. And you click on Add, and you give it the name of your client. That might be your access points, or the access point I have there called WLC, or wireless LAN controller. So this policy will only work if the requests come from this WLC client. So now we know that we have our local users on campus. The next thing we do is we create one for your users that go visiting to other eduroam locations. So what we do there is we give it a very similar name here. So we call this local users roaming off campus. That gives you an idea as to what the policy is for. And you then go and do the same here. You look for the client friendly name here. You click on Add. And because our clients that we've added in the Radius clients are the actual names of the roaming service, we specify this. We say roaming, and now we type .star. And this means everything that follows, because the dot, as I said before, matches just a single character, and the star means everything else that follows. What you can do is you can simply change this to .star and then matching .ja.net. So everything else that is in here followed by .ja.net will match. And you can also add a dollar if you really want to be specific and say that this is the client-friendly name that you want to match. So click on OK. And this effectively will match all the requests that are being sent to you. Now, on our end, in the support server, we allow you to configure the domains that you are going to accept, and we will only send requests that match those domains. So on the support server, you will have probably set student.domain.act.uk and domain.act.uk. So in this instance, that will be sent, and you don't need to match the usernames again. So click on Next. We authenticate the requests on this server. Click Next. We do the same again. We override the network policy. We add protected EAP. We edit protected EAP. We make sure that the right certificate is selected. We untick the option for enforcing network access protection because they roam elsewhere and your network access protection doesn't apply in this instance. You click next, you click on edit here. You set the number of authentication requires to 0. You may want to set this to something really high too, but the option here is then that someone might want to try your passwords and try to break into your system that way. So as before, we set that to 0. We untick the option here. We click on OK. And we click on OK again. We make sure that none of these are set. We click next, and we click finish. So now we have our 2 local user policies set. We now create a third policy for other people who are roaming to your service. So we call them eduroam users on campus. So these are people who are visiting your campus. So you choose here the option to look for the username. And here we are just going to use a syntax that allows only items, only username matches that contain an @ to be sent to us. This is purely for the basis that anything that does not contain an @ we can't match. We do not know where these users come from. So if they do not contain a realm portion, your service should simply reject them and simply say, no, sorry, I know that the eduroam people don't know what to do with it, so I'm sorry, but I'm not matching you here. So it'll simply reject them. So again, what we do is we provide the @, we provide the 1, and then we have to provide a group of characters. And so we use square brackets, we match a dash, we match A to Z in capital letters, 0 to 9, and we also allow a match of an underscore. And we then close the selection of characters and we provide a plus. Plus means there has to be a minimum of 1 of these characters. And then that is followed by a group that matches exactly this. We add a slash dot followed by the group of characters. And we do this. So that means it has to match at least a minimum of 1 character, followed by a full stop, and then more characters. And that should match everything that comes to us. Now I'm just going to double check that that is the correct syntax. And that is exactly it. Perfect. I should just adjust this to $1, to end with $1, just as we did with the username previously. So now this matches everything ending with at least an at least 1 of these characters, followed by a dot and another set of these characters. And we click on next. We click on forwarding requests to the following Radius server group, which means it gets sent to the eduroam server. We click next. We don't need to adjust anything here. Click next, and we click finish. So now we have those 3 policies in this order, so that you test your first policy is those on campus, then you test for off campus, and then finally you test for those who are visiting you on campus. So the next policy would be the network policy. We click here on next. We call this allow access or eduroam. Click next. We click on add, and here we look for specifically something called the authentication types policy. So we click on Add. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong option. Authentication type. You click Next. You click on EAP because we allow EAP TTLS and we also allow PEEP there. We do not choose any of the others because they are all insecure or options that do not matter. So we click on OK. We click on Next. We provide access granted. Click on Next. And now in this option, you get to choose the EAP types that you want. We untick these two options because they are insecure options. We click on Add. We provide protected EAP here. We click on Edit. And again, we select the correct certificate. We choose secure password. We click on that. And we set those again to 0 and to unticked there to not try and change password. And then we can see whether there's anything else. You can try using the smart card or other certificate, but this is generally the option. So you click on that, and then you click on Next. And here are a couple of things that you can select, although these we don't really need to select. We don't really need to faff with those. What you can do in Call Station ID is you can provide option here to say that only access to the eduroam network is allowed. But because organizations and various network vendors do not necessarily add the actual SSID name into the called station ID, but rather the profile name or even the location where the network is located, this is not an option to really use. So you click Next. Then here we can go through these options. NAP enforcement, we do not do NAP enforcement. That you can filter, that you can mess with later. You could go through these options. Encryption is the one that you really want to go through. You do not want to allow no encryption. You do not want to allow basic encryption. So you should use strong or strongest encryption. So you click Next and you click Finish. And now you can see it sits right at the top. And that is exactly what we want. So this is the basic configuration that should allow you to start using eduroam in using network access, using the NPS server. So if there's anything else that needs to be connected, you can tweak this and allow your network, your wireless LAN controller to make some decisions there. One thing that I will say here is, as always, it is good security practice that you separate your visitors, i.e. these people, from your local users on campus. Your local users on campus should not be on the same wireless LAN network as your eduroam users. Because these are unknowns, these are knowns. Right, and that concludes this video.